Part 9, Section 6. The natural bias towards the covenant of works. Antinomista. Well, sir, I had thought that God's covenant with the Jews had been a mixed covenant, and that they had been partly under the covenant of works. But now I perceive there was little difference between their covenant of grace and ours being Christians. Evangelista. Truly, the opposition between the Jews' covenant of grace and ours was chiefly of their own making. They should have been driven to Christ by the law, but they expected life in obedience to it, and this was their great error and mistake. Antinomista. And surely, sir, it is no great marvel that they so greatly erred and were mistaken in this point, having the covenant of grace made known to them so darkly, when many among us, who have it more clearly manifested, do the same. Evangelista. And truly it is no marvel, though all men naturally do so, for man naturally apprehends God to be the great master of heaven, and he is to be God's servant, and therefore he must do his work before he can have his wages, and the more work he does, the better wages he will have. Hence, when Aristotle came to speak of blessedness, and to pitch real fast before I read the Aristotle sentence, did you hear what he said? Oh, well, Jews had it difficult. Antinomista says, oh, well, of course they were mistaken. It's no great marvel, because the covenant of God didn't reveal the covenant of grace very clearly to them, like he clear to us. Of course they thought no, all men do this, not just the Jews, every single person, because it is their natural disposition to want to work for our wages, and the more we work, the better wages we will have. That is part of the sin that permeates us. Hence, when Aristotle came to speak of blessedness and to pitch on the nearest means to that end, he said it was operation and working. Also, Pythagoras agrees with him when he says it is man's felicity to be like God. How? By becoming righteous and holy. And let us not marvel that these men so erred, who never heard of Christ, nor of the covenant of grace, when those to whom it was made known by the apostles of Christ did likewise. Witness those to whom the apostle Paul wrote his epistles, and especially the Galatians. For even though, when he was present with them, his preaching had made known to them the covenant of grace, yet after his departure, through the seducement of false teachers, they were soon turned to the covenant of works, and sought to be justified either in whole or in part by it. So are you hearing this? Their natural disposition is to be in the covenant of works. That's what makes sense to us. The covenant of grace does not make sense to us. We want to earn our salvation. And thought to be justified either in whole or in part by it, as you may see if you seriously consider that epistle, Galatians 3:1-3. Indeed, what does Luther say? It is, he says, a general opinion of men's reason throughout the whole world that righteousness is obtained by the works of the law, and the reason is because the covenant was engendered in the minds of men in the very creation, so that man naturally cannot judge otherwise of the law than as a covenant of works, which was given to make us righteous and to give us life and salvation. That's how we naturally see it. This pernicious opinion about the law, that it justifies and makes us righteous before God, says Luther again, is so deeply rooted in man's reason, and all mankind is so wrapped in it, that they can hardly get out. Indeed, I myself, he says, Luther, have now preached the gospel nearly 20 years and have been exercised in it daily by reading and writing, so that I may well seem to be rid of this wicked opinion. Yet notwithstanding, now and then I feel this old filth cling to my heart, whereby it comes to pass that I would willingly deal with God in such a way that I would bring something with myself, for which he would give me his grace. No, it is to be feared that, as you said, many among us who ordinarily have more means of light than Luther or any before him ever had, yet notwithstanding, either wholly or in part, accept justification and acceptance by the works of the law. Expect justification and acceptance by the works of the law. Antinomista. Sir, I am truly persuaded that there are very many in the city of London who are carried with a blind, preposterous zeal for their own good works and well-doings, secretly seeking to become holy, just, and righteous before God by diligently keeping and carefully walking in all God's commandments. Yet no man can persuade them that they are doing so, for truly, sir, I am persuaded that our neighbor and friend Nomista is one of them. So here's Antinomista kind of saying, yeah, I'm totally on your side with that. Nomista here, though, I'm glad you're setting him straight. I'm glad you're ripping him a new one, because you and me, buddy, Antinomista and Evangelista forever, we're on this side. Now, Evangelista is going to get Antinomista and tell him his point of view is wrong too. Evangelista, alas, there are thousands in the world that make a Christ of their works, and here is their undoing, etc. They look for righteousness and acceptance in the precept more than in the promise, in the law more than in the gospel, in working more than in believing, and so they miscarry, many poor ignorant souls among us. When we bid them to obey and do their duties, can think of nothing but working themselves to life. When they are troubled, they must lick themselves whole again. When wounded, they must run to the salve of duties and a stream of performances and neglect Christ. Indeed, it is to be feared that there are various persons who are able to distinguish in words between the law and gospel. And in their judgments they hold and maintain that man is justified by faith without works of the law. Yet, in effect and practice, that is to say, in heart and conscience, they do otherwise. So the people who know the truth, and yet do otherwise. And there is some touch of this in all of us. Otherwise, we would not be so up and down in our comforts and in believing as we still are, and so cast down with every weakness as we are. But what do you say, neighbor Nomista? Do you think you are guilty of these things? So now he turns to Nomista and asks him. Nomista, truly, sir, I must confess I begin to be somewhat suspicious of myself that I am so. And because I desire your judgment as to my condition, I would entreat you to let me relate it to you. Evangelista, with great good will.